All right, I'm excited to talk Ayurvedic medicine, liver health, detoxification, and all things how we can improve our future self. So, the Future You program, I've got Jonathan Glass on the podcast to share his insights on what we can do today to be a better version of ourselves in the future. As I am working on that myself, middle age, just focusing on how am I going to be showing up to life when I'm my mom's age, who I'm with my mom right now is 84, and I see all of her friends and going, okay, I don't want to be that way and
Hmm.
struggle with all these illnesses that there are all these people are getting medication. So Jonathan, I'm
Hmm.
excited to finally connect in kind of person and read your book and just wanting to dive into what you're thinking and why you're doing what you're doing.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
So tell us a
Definitely.
little bit
Mm,
about your journey. I know we could talk the whole hour from because you have a huge
for sure.
long
Yeah.
background as
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
we kind of all do at this stage in life. But what do you do now and why do you do it?
Okay. So I am a Ayurvedic practitioner, a naturopathic doctor, classical acupuncturist, and so I've been seeing clients for, gosh, I mean, acupuncture since the mid 90s. And before that, I was a massage therapist. So just been continuing my work and my practice, busy practice outside of Boston. And also do quite a bit of teaching. I have a class or program that I call the Total Life Cleanse. I've been doing that for about 25 years. And it's a program that initially was for what we used to call our difficult patients, people who were really off the radar in terms of how they were living and eating. But we found out it was really for anyone and everyone because we all need to reset.
Mm.
And, with dietary stressors, toxin stressors, life stressors, everybody needs that opportunity. So a lot of one-on-one work and a lot of group support also.
I keep talking about this because I find this more common that we all need to realize, even if you're not struggling with illness, chronic
Yeah.
inflammation, that we have to do that to the computer after a while, right? We need to push control, delete, reset it. I need to turn it off. It
Yes.
gets congested, too many files open. I just
Yeah.
need to restart it. And we don't realize our own body, what what we're having it do every day and what our liver has to do
Yes.
and how
Yeah.
often we should be taking care of ourselves and rebooting it before we have these huge red flags.
Exactly. Exactly. I love I don't know if they did this in Ayurveda thousands of years ago, but in Chinese medicine, the practitioners, there was a period of history where the practitioner would only take money when the person was healthy.
Oh, novel.
So it was a maintenance of health system program. It was real health care. And, and when someone got sick or injured or whatever, then they would go to that practitioner as much as needed at no charge. So it's
Mm.
a complete flip on the paradigm. Ayurveda, along with its incredible understanding of the human body, the human mind, the spirit, the soul, everything, the universe, pretty much, um, recommends that we reset or cleanse twice a year. And so this is from, ancient wisdom. This is thousands of years ago when the water was clean. We didn't have, 80, 100,000 chemicals in the environment. We didn't have Wi-Fi. We didn't have the stressors that we have now. And even back then, it was recommended to do a reset, a detox twice a year in the fall and the spring.
Mm.
So it was, it's part and parcel of the system. And, health is not just eliminating problems from the body, but it's also improving, but also maintaining. Like, how do you
Mm.
maintain something? And, one analogy is a little bit like a fire. You don't want the fire going out, but you don't want the fire overwhelming and overtaking the fireplace to the point where it burns down the house. You want to keep the fire stoking and that takes maintenance.
Mm.
If you're sitting around a campfire, there's usually gonna be one or two people that are maintaining that fire. Doesn't want to get too big, doesn't want to get, or, in more traditional Native American settings, there was the fire keeper. They would make sure the fire was stoking just right. So in the body, we have to maintain because in this world, there's a tendency of entropy of things breaking down. If we don't, as I'm getting older, I'm 65 now, so I call it anything I do now is now anti-gravity. You know, it's like it's like doing that which maintains and even improves because I'm improving in some ways, for sure. Some ways I'm stronger than I was 10 years ago, and in certain ways. But it's a maintenance process. And unless we do that, then the tendency is decline quite quickly. So it's important.
So I want to dive into just a short review again, this
Sure.
whole hour conversation or longer on what is Ayurvedic medicine. We've done a few different episodes on it already, but if you can just give kind of a summary version, cliff
Sure.
notes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Ayurveda, Veda means knowledge, Ayur means life, and it's a part of something called the Atharva Veda, which is one of the Vedas, which is one of the scriptures that was written about 5,000 years ago, but it's based on information that goes way, way, way further back. First time things were written down, they say were 5,000 years ago, and they say the reason they wrote them down is because in this age that we're in now, people's memory isn't as good as it used to be. So we need things written down. Before that, people could hear it once, get it, remember it. It was lodged there. Now we have so much data, we need to have things written down so we can study them. But so it's a system of medicine that is very aligned with um, a very comprehensive understanding of what is the human being, what is the body, what is the mind, what is the intelligence, what is the consciousness, what is the soul, what is even includes what is our dharma or our purpose in life. So it integrates all those things. It's aligned with the yoga system so that it helps the person feel, do well in a human body, health and all the beneficial things of being healthy, but at the same time encourages personal growth, spiritual development. It acknowledges all of that within its system. So it's very broad, but it also is very specific. It's Ayurveda even included, most people don't know that it was the first system of known medicine on the planet that included surgery. So even surgery is a part of Ayurveda, but obviously it's only done if it's absolutely necessary, but it is included. So many, many branches of medicine are included in Ayurveda.
And how do you integrate Ayurvedic medicine in your total life cleanse program?
Okay. So yeah, so it's based on, I would say the principles of the cleanse are based on Ayurvedic principles. It's not 1,000% pure Ayurvedic cleanse because I think we would really need everyone to go somewhere for 2 or 3 months together and live somewhere like that. But it's based on Ayurvedic principles, which are basically understanding the original causes of disease, which in Ayurveda says one is toxin, and those toxins can be externally generated or they can be internally generated. And the reason they're internally generated is due to, say, undigested food. If the digestion's poor, then undigested proteins leak into the bloodstream. And we hear things like leaky gut these days. Back then, Ayurveda said that's the second layer of disease. And then those things get into the tissues and then more and more and more like that. So that's a version of internal and external. We have so many toxins. Then we have something called pragyaparad. Pragyaparad means when we offend our own wisdom, knowledge, experience, and intuition.
Hmm.
So Ayurveda actually says that's the original cause of disease. In simple terms, when we lose touch with our intuition and our common sense, and we don't listen to what's beneficial for us. And a lot of us kind of know. So many times when people come in, I'll assess them. Oh, you have parasites. Oh my gosh, I knew it. You know, but they didn't do anything for 3 years, but they kind of knew it, or they knew they had something going on, whatever it may be. So we kind of know things. And in our modern culture, we're not as supported enough. It's not part of the social language, I would say, that that's a real thing to
Mhm.
begin to trust your knowing, trust your gut, trust what works for you, trust what doesn't work for you, and then get the support that you need to take it further. So those are the sort of the two negatives. And then the positives are uh, prana, agni, and ojas. Prana is vital life energy. It's analogous to chi, or we also call it in the West bioelectric energy. That's what we're doing when we're doing energy healing or acupuncture. And it's a real thing. You can now test it with little meters. The meter will beep when you go over an acupuncture point because the body conducts energy. And so we're energy creating machines on some level. The human body is. And when that energy is meant to go very intelligently. That's called buddhi. Buddhi means innate intelligence. And when that buddhi is blocked for different reasons due to toxins, then the life energy intelligence doesn't flow as well. So you want that prana flowing well. You want to have access to your innate intelligence, which then gives us, when we do that to a better degree, the intelligence of the innate immune system works better as well. That's called ojas. And it's understood that we all come in with different sort of strength of ojas. Some people are quite delicate, and some people can, it's amazing. Some people can eat like crap for 70 years and get away with it. Some people really can't. I mean, if I ate like crap, I don't know. I joke. I said I'd be dead if I ate like some people eat, and they can get away with it but it usually catches up. At some point, it catches up, or sometimes they can go for a long time, and then something serious will happen.
Yeah.
Something, the body
Yeah.
can take it, and then boom, something really heavy happens. So, prana, agni, ojas, the cause. So this is what the cleanse is based on. The principle, if we remove the stressors to a significant degree, we add in some good stuff, and then we do things to support the prana. That's usually through breath or movements. That's very helpful. I mean, a lot of us know about pranayama or alternate nostril breathing or meditation, but these are real things that have real meaning to them. And I think the more we really get that, yeah, 10 minutes of that breathing every morning is truly significant. It's not just like a cute little thing that gets me out of a bad mood. It's a real thing. It really helps smooth out the intelligent energy flow in the body. And then we understand there's not just physical toxins, there's mental toxins, emotional toxins, and I even talk about spiritual toxins. So in the cleanse, we're identifying these things so that people become aware of them and they remove the stressors in their diet. It's not a fasting program. Not fasting's great, but I would say my purpose, and I do work with people one-on-one in that way, but my purpose is to really help people get on the target of living optimally for that person and give them an experience of what it feels like, to eliminate the toxic foods from their diet, bring in some healthy patterns, have that experience. So after the cleanse, if they want to go deeper and do like you know, a juice fast or water fast or something like that, we can do those kind of things. But it's really important to have a good foundation. And also my intention is so that when the cleanse is over, people can actually integrate some of these things into their life, because that's the purpose anyway, so that we can
Mhm.
have a higher quality life,
For
so
sure.
yeah.
How do you feel that the timeline from birth to this, when the person's in the program, has impact of that toxic overload and toxic burden, emotional stressors, trauma, toxic environmental toxins? Do you find it accumulation, filling that beaker of toxins?
So I'm not quite sure what you meant by the timeline. Can you
Well, if you look
clarify
at
that?
someone's history, if you're
Yeah,
starting with a client,
yeah,
it's not just where they are, it's how they got to where they are today.
right,
But
yeah,
looking backwards of, okay, from birth to today, tell me a little bit about your journey and significant events that have continuously added to that beaker of stress, adding
yes,
in emotional trauma, a loss of a family member, mold exposure,
yes,
parasite in Mexico or whatever. I just feel that
yeah,
this
There's so many
there's
layers.
so much coming in,
Yeah,
and so
exactly.
suddenly it just gets to be so full that your body just can't tolerate
Right,
that accumulation of all these different sources of chronic
right,
stress.
right. So yeah, that's really true. And depending, of course, like you said, where, whether, what kind of emotional traumas someone's had, or physical traumas, or diet or lifestyle, whatever it may be. And that's why in the beginning, like we said, it would be for our difficult patients who were
Mhm.
really off the grid. But what we found was that just by, simplifying things, removing toxins, adding some basic common sense principles into their life. And a lot of people, we also found out that, I had herbalists and healers and acupuncturists and yogis who started doing the program because, again, in the beginning, I thought, oh, this is just for people that are really kind of whacked out, but it's really not, because we all need it. We all need, whether it's my Total Life Cleanse program or something, to reset a couple times a year. But what was interesting is that even with people with serious issues, by removing some of those things, it did two things. One, they still felt better. And two, it would more easily reveal what else needs to be worked on. You know, that's why with the cleanse, I always do a consultation with people. Go, okay, so after the cleanse, what do we need to keep working on? Now we're creating a platform that you can really move forward in a much healthier way, understanding that, okay, you have, say, heavy duty yeast overgrowth in the body. Okay, we did the cleanse, came down, you're off the sugar, fantastic. Your liver's starting to function better, your elimination's starting to function better. You feel better, but there's still some issues. But now you're able to deal with it, as opposed to before, okay, start taking these herbs with, or nutrients, caprylic acid and yeast killers and things like that. Okay, maybe necessary, but that person might feel so toxic and so hellish because they're doing it all at once, and they don't have a platform to support the body to detox. The
Mhm.
body's, elimination pathways, lymphatic system, liver, large intestine, small intestine, they all have to be functioning, kidneys,
Mhm.
reasonably well, so that then we can do the next layer. Some people need a big next layer and some people don't, But you did mention something interesting, emotional toxins. Ayurveda says the cause of emotional imbalances are undigested experiences.
Mhm.
So everything in Ayurveda is about digestion, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, you know, like when we're reading something from that paradigm, we're digesting what we're reading. And if like you're reading a book, all of a sudden you're like, I just read 3 paragraphs. I have no idea what I just read. That means you're not digesting it anymore. It means, okay, either go
Time to
for,
go to bed.
either like get refocused or close the book and come back later, because you're
Yeah.
not taking it in. We're not digesting it. So that's
Mhm.
true with life. And now these days, there's so much input constantly. And that's another thing from that beautiful Ayurvedic, perspective. Wow, when I'm on my phone, 15 hours a day, or I'm watching media constantly, then we have to digest all that. We have to take it in and process it. And that's why we go numb. That's why we then need to try to balance that out with a bunch of sugar, because part of our system is so whacked out from taking all that in. Sugar is actually an attempted way to balance things out, or alcohol, or whatever it may be, to balance out the derangement. Ayurveda loves the word derangement. The derangement that some of these things cause in the body and mind. So
Mm. Yeah, I've been finding this a lot more powerful to work with the client on their foundations first in
yes,
order of
yeah,
operations. And I feel that you're not getting people unstuck if they're coming to you because they just don't feel themselves or gaining weight, they have chronic fatigue, they have gut issues, whatever their labels are and emotional trauma that they're experiencing, they just can't deal with life. if we don't
Right.
work on
Yeah.
rewiring the body system, it seems that we're not able to progress. It's just another band-aid. And I did that from personal experience when I had my adrenal exhaustion 10 years ago. I kept just getting the functional labs done and taking the supplements. But I share and be authentic that I didn't really fix myself until I changed my whole life and worked on my my start of the day and my end of the day and working on me.
That's
The
good
supplements
for you.
alone do not work. And you don't make
Generally
the
not.
big change. They do work, but only, I
Yep.
think, more effectively long term,
Goes
working
together.
on the
Yes.
foundations as you're discussing, rewiring.
Absolutely.
I'm finding more that the vagus nerve or resetting the gut brain connection
Hmm.
is that vagus nerve and the fascia and
Hmm.
lymphatic system that flow the chi.
Hmm.
So interesting to hear your
Hmm.
perspective on that with the acupuncture background
Hmm.
in Ayurvedic medicine and the role of
Hmm.
the liver and all that.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, everything you said is awesome. I totally agree. How important all of that is. And that's, I tend to like to start from the bottom up, I mean, and there's many ways to access healing. I mean, I think of healing as maybe the center of the wheel is health, and there's many spokes, that you can approach it. That's why one practitioner may say, "Oh, you should do this," and another one said, "Oh, you should do this," and they could both be right. You know, it's not that they're necessarily arguing with each other. It's just another way. But typically, um, first of all, nothing will be really lasting unless we work on the base, unless we work on some of these fundamental things. Now, yes, you can argue that if someone comes in with really bad low back pain, I'm not going to say, okay, let's do a 2-hour consultation and find out the roots of where that's coming from right now. If I can get them out of a little pain with acupuncture, then they have some relief, and then we can talk about it. I mean, there's no problem doing symptomatic stuff, but it's not long lasting if we don't get to the deeper level core. You mentioned fascia, and it's very interesting because the modern theory of the acupuncture meridians and the bioelectric energy is that it runs through the fascia. And the fascia um, is really where the emotions first really get stuck. That's where the fascia accumulate. I mean, the emotions, we say the body holds on to emotion, tends to hold on in the fascia. That's where it first goes, lingers there, then it can go deeper into the tissues. But the first, and all those meridians go through the fascia. And each meridian is related to an organ, and each meridian is related to an element in an organ, which is also correlated with an emotion. So acupuncture can be, especially if there's that intent, can be a little bit like nonverbal therapy because you're literally working with the emotional body when you're working with the energy, with the prana, with the chi that's going through the fascia. Now that can have some even more impactful when the practitioner is open and aware of that. And that way it creates a vessel for a deeper level of healing to happen, even in acupuncture. Some acupuncturists are very medical, and there's nothing wrong with that. Very, you know, they're not looking at things so much from an emotional perspective. They're mostly looking at it from a very clinical, medical perspective, and it still can be very helpful. System I study, Five Element, is coming at it from another angle where it's really honoring the whole person, the emotional body, as well as the body, mind, spirit level. So when I'm doing that, that's the paradigm that I'm looking at the person from, trying my best to see what's happening now and actually see who is that person when they're actually healthy, when they're really balanced. My teacher used to always emphasize that we're meant to see what's really going on, but really, really, truly, intuitively, whatever it may be, see who is this person when they're at their best, and what's it going to take to go from here to there in order to, and oftentimes it's physical, mental, dietary, so many things, healing, healing, emotional clearing, whatever it may be. I think I joke in the cleanse sometimes where how much of society would be able to decrease their psych meds if they, or come off, if they just drank more water and stopped drinking soda. You know, every once in a while I have like, go to a party and I'll have sugar or something. I don't eat a ton of refined sugar, but every once in a while I will. And it's so interesting because I'll get this sugar crash. And it's like a body memory of like, that's what I felt like, most of the time in high school.
Hmm.
I had no idea that my low mood and my fatigue and my was just because I was eating sugar all the time. I mean, other issues too. I had my other issues. I'm still working those out. But it was amazing to have that body memory. I had like I remember a year ago, I just had it was a cake, a carrot cake, my favorite cake. I just had a lot of it, and I was just like, whoa. I was like intoxicated with the sugar, and then I crashed. It was a great nap, but I was like, this is how I felt in high school most of the time, you know,
Yeah.
and wonder why I was depressed
Yeah,
or
put it all
anxious,
together.
you know, yeah,
Well, I'd love to talk more about, you mentioned the liver detoxification and you're talking a cleanse. People think, oh, I'm going to do maple syrup, cayenne pepper, whatever the formula is you hear about online. But the importance of the liver inner health and the drainage pathways, if you can
yes,
share your perspective in your Ayurvedic Chinese
sure.
medicine, combining it, I'd love to learn more.
Yep. So liver is so interesting. And again, every organ is seen physical, mental, emotional, and even spirit, actually.
Mhm.
So starting with physical, the liver, what is it, 500 to 1,000 different functions that
Mhm.
they've discovered that the liver performs. Basically it takes anything that you eat. There's a vein that goes or a vessel that goes from the small intestine to the liver. Now the liver has to take that and transform it into a form that the body can utilize to then turn into blood. Blood is the foundational tissue of the body. The blood is healthy. Guess what? The rest of the body can be healthy. If the blood is not so healthy, or if there's a lot of toxins, if the liver is stressed, if the liver is in itself toxic or sluggish, it can't do a very good job. And it can't do a good job at also when it takes in heavy metals, chemicals, other toxins, it also has to break those down into a form that the body can then eliminate. So the liver is huge. It's a little bit like the swamp of the body. Everything has to go through the liver. Everything goes to the liver. The liver also has ducts that release bile that go into the gallbladder, and that bile is carrying all the toxins.
Mhm.
And if the gallbladder, if the liver is too congested, if the gallbladder is too congested, we hear about people having their gallbladders taken out all the time. Although my teacher did say if you're going to have one organ taken out, that's the one. But still, it has a purpose. It has a purpose. And, it takes that bile, which then there's fat in the small intestine. It knows the digestion is super intelligent. It's always scanning. As soon as food goes in your stomach, the stomach itself is intelligent. It scans what's here. What's this? What do we need? Okay, we're going to need to send a signal to the small intestine to then send a signal to the pancreas. We need some more enzymes. And then we need some bile to help digest fat. So it's all happening very intelligently. So the liver's huge. Um, the liver gets stagnant due to toxins. It gets stagnant due to suppressed emotions. The liver holds a lot of energy. In Chinese, they call it the hun. And the hun is like the liver's related to the season spring. So if you think of the positive aspects of spring, uplifting, beautiful, inspiring, exciting, summer's coming, hopeful, all those energies, that's what the liver is meant to do for us. It's meant to give us vision for life and hope and excitement. So the liver is a part of us. It's the subpersonality in us that's the planner, the visionary, both physical eyes, but vision for our life, right? The gallbladder is a decision maker. So
Mhm.
the planner needs a decision maker. This is my plan. I have to decide how to make it happen. When the liver and gallbladder are congested, stagnant, toxic, none of that happens. And what happens when our plans continually get interrupted? We get frustrated, we get angry, we get resentful, right? And then we get not so nice. And it's so when the liver is pent up or toxic, then we become less hopeful. And if we're say we have maybe the toxins coming in from an emotional perspective, okay, maybe sadly someone is abused a lot as a kid in different ways. So now they have all this pent up emotion that they've never processed. Eventually that's going to get stored in the liver. And from an emotional perspective, it could start stagnating the chi, the bioelectric energy of that organ, which would then make it more susceptible to not be able to handle physical toxins, chemicals, heavy metals that come in. So we have the emotional component, we have the biochemical component, and then add on top of that, they're, drinking a lot of alcohol, they're eating horrible food. So now it's just a triple whammy and they have no connection with their own self and spirit, whatever. So now that person's really pent up, really frustrated. And, for that person in that state, sometimes the only alternative is anger, rage, and, being harmful to other people. So, that tells me, where gangs start. They need a place the liver needs a place to, the liver is also about expressing its self-assertion. So Chinese call it, in Ayurveda also, the emotion is anger, but it's also really our capacity for self-assertion, for healthy
Mm.
self-assertion. If I deserve to exist, I deserve to be, I deserve to express myself to a healthy degree. Not too much to override others, but not so little that I get walked over. So
Mm.
the liver is that energy. So it's so
Yeah.
important to take care of the liver.
Go back to, you mentioned words that I think it'd be good to go a little deeper to explain what does a stagnant liver
Mm,
mean, congestion, toxic. I think those are three big words to describe the
yep.
liver, but people might not know what is that
What it
exactly.
really means. Yeah. Well, on a physical level, the liver has to take every single toxin that gets into the body, whether it comes in through the lungs and gets into the blood, eventually goes to the liver. And the liver has to scan and see what's a nutrient, what's a toxin. If a toxin, it wants to conjugate it, wants to attach onto it, and then do something, break it down into a particle, uh, often water soluble, try to make it water soluble, so that the body can then excrete it. Okay, so that's a process. And it's a natural detox process. Some people argue that you don't really need to do a cleanse because the body's amazing and it detoxifies all the time. So, there's actually people out there that write books on stuff like that and they say it's not necessary. But, like anything, that organ, if it has to do more than it's capable of doing in any given day, it's also really smart. It's understood the liver is extremely intelligent. When it can't deal with something in the moment, just like we do the same thing, I'll deal with it later. I'll put the pile of papers over here and deal with what I need to do now. But that pile of papers, if they get, kept being pushed over there,
Mhm.
the liver has to do something with it. And rather than say, well, I'm just going to dump it back out in the body and hope for the best, the body's smart.
Mhm.
Prioritize. Let me hold on to this until that time comes when I can start focusing on it and clearing it out. But if we never give it that time, if we are drinking 14 cups of coffee a day and drinking alcohol every night and eating crappy food and never doing anything, healing or emotionally healing for ourselves, then what literally happens is that the bioelectric energy, the chi, the vibration, the energy of the liver
Mhm.
starts getting more and more sluggish. And we've heard of fatty liver.
Mhm.
Fatty liver, it's not, it used to be thought it was mostly just from alcohol, but it's not just from alcohol. It's from our diet and it's from stress and it's from stored toxins. The body will encapsulate things in order to protect itself. So it prioritizes that. And that's smart. It's good that it's doing that. You can thank your liver for being a fatty liver, actually. But you want to, okay, what got me into this? And what can I do to get rid of that fatty liver? Because now with a fatty liver, the liver doesn't have as much access to itself to do the job that it's meant to do on a daily basis. So that causes what's called stagnation. The liver just is not functioning at its optimal level. And some people will even have some pain under their right ribs or tightness or pain on their back. Their back, their middle back can be a little tight. That's often the liver working hard or struggling. Sometimes it's emotional. And people will have, my mid back is really sore on the right side. You're going through something emotional. Oh my God, that can happen. It's very common. But the liver can get stagnant or toxic because of all the inflow that's coming in that it's not able to process and release efficiently and effectively. Then it builds up. And that's what happens.
Well, and that's also thinking too, the drainage pathways, if they're clogged, and the role of
Yes.
the lymphatic system and bile and flowing
Hmm.
that through. And I was just diving into some solo Debbie podcasts on the role of fascia
Hmm.
and the lymphatic system and the vagus nerve, and how it's just amazing how our body works.
It
But
is amazing.
interesting to hear your perspective in that translation into Ayurvedic medicine and maybe the combination Chinese medicine, because you talk in your book about the seasons, and I always hear the Chinese medicine clock that if you wake up between 1 and 3 a.m., that's liver time and gallbladder
Hmm.
time. If you could add anything to that to help us understand the kind of a holistic approach and different
Sure.
mindsets.
Yeah, so it is amazing. The Chinese clock, and also Ayurveda has the same clock. Just they word it a little bit differently.
Mm.
So yeah, it just kind of speaks to the cycles of nature, the cycles of everything, that we're very connected, more so than we might imagine, to the laws of nature, to the seasons, to the time of day. And it's understood that every organ has a time of day that it's most empowered, most empowered. So that can mean if it's in good shape, it's going to do a really good job. But if it's in really rough shape, then it will manifest those symptoms more so at that time. On our very first cleanse, we had a nurse who worked at a liver. She was on the liver ward, and when we explained the time between 1 and 3, we heard this like, "Oh my God!" And we're like, "What happened? Are you okay?" And she said that like 3 o'clock is the most common time that a patient will pull the emergency cord because something intense is going on. They're having some heavy symptom. And, it related to her. So, yeah, the liver is most active between 1 and 3 in the morning. And what happens? A lot of people say, I go to sleep fine, but I wake up at between 1 and 3 or around 3 o'clock in the morning. And I don't know what it is. Wine helps me go to sleep, but I don't know. Every time I drink, I wake up. It interrupts my sleep.
Hmm.
Well, guess what? I wonder why. Your liver is working hard to process that alcohol in the middle of the night. It's very common. People fall asleep, no problem,
Mm-hmm.
but that liver time. So yeah, the
Yes.
body's super intelligent, and how it all seasonally connects. Even the stomach, the large intestine is between 5 and 7 in the morning. I remember when I was in acupuncture school, when we were first taught that, and I was living in an apartment with 7 guys because it was a live-in situation. And our teacher said you should all go to the bathroom between 5 and 7 in the morning. So we're all like waiting in line at 5 to 7 in the morning. And he said, and I found this to be true, even if you're irregular, then if you just go into the bathroom before 7 in the morning, even if you don't have to go every day, after a week or two, your body will start adapting because it wants to eliminate first thing in the morning. It likes doing that. And so that's a technique for helping to get people back on the natural rhythms of things.
Well, it's almost setting their circadian rhythm and their sleep schedule, the
Right.
sleep wake, because if interesting if you don't go to bed till 11 at night and you're missing the sleep, the deep sleep, restorative sleep, the REM sleep stages, and this combining that in the Chinese medicine clock or Ayurvedic
Yes,
medicine, and how those systems might get dysfunctional if we're not
absolutely.
creating an optimal sleep hygiene routine and sleeping. If it's 9 p.m., I could bed at 8 because
Good
I
for
get up
you.
at
That's awesome.
5 a.m., 4:30
Good for
a.m. I'm
you.
awake to go work out, but I'm awake before my alarm goes off, or I don't even have alarm. I'm still up after 5.
Great.
But how, if people don't have a good sleep routine, how that's
Mm,
impacting their liver detoxification, elimination
absolutely.
processes, congestion,
Absolutely. Yeah,
stagnant.
yeah, totally. Ayurveda says the sleep before midnight is the best sleep.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, I've experienced this where, I go to bed at 9:30 and say I wake up for a minute at 11:30. I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I've slept a really long time and I have so much longer. That's great. But if you go to bed at 12 and you wake up at 1:30, it's like, wow, morning's almost here.
Hmm.
It's a very, very different experience. And yeah, all the hormonal changes. If you're up late at night, that usually means we're going to eat something at night. People who stay up till midnight usually will have a snack at 10 o'clock, 10:30, and that's usually a good indication. If you're tired at 9 and then you stay up and then you get hungry, that means you should have already gone to bed.
Hmm.
Because that hunger means, okay, you're beyond what you're actually, your natural rhythms have been telling you go to sleep. And now, yeah, you need some sugar to keep going. You
Hmm.
need something to keep the body going because you're forcing yourself past that natural rhythm. When we go to bed too late, the liver does not have the time or the ability. One of the things the liver is meant to do in the middle of the night is to scan the body, scan the blood. The blood is described, it sort of pools in the liver. It's not stagnant, but the liver is is receiving that blood during that time and really scanning it, really extracting toxins and doing
Hmm.
its work to detoxify the body. But when we go to bed too late, or if we eat too late at night, then the body's innate intelligence has to prioritize. It's like, okay, we got to focus on digestion. Tomorrow, hopefully, we'll deal with the toxins because right now we have to deal with the small intestine breaking, stomach breaking things down, small intestine breaking. It's the body has to prioritize. So,
Hmm.
not eating late at night, going to bed at a more reasonable time gives the immune system and the liver an opportunity to really do its work.
What you mentioned a few times, that scanning. Who do you think is scanning? The liver is scanning, but is there the microbes? Who do you think is scanning?
As far as that goes, yeah, that's really, well, I always go back to the original. And, I think, look, the bacteria is extraordinarily intelligent, how they interact with each other. The microbiome is extraordinarily intelligent. Um, it's on that level. But behind that, I think, and this is where, maybe modern science isn't quite there yet. They're getting there. They're getting there. And maybe I'm sure there's somebody out there who's been able to make, I know like Zach Bush has really been, he really loves to talk about that kind of stuff, the
Yeah.
innate intelligence. But it's really in Ayurveda, the word buddhi. It's the innate intelligence. It's the same intelligence that controls the tides and the moon and the stars and the sun and the bees and everything. It's that same intelligence is in the human body and it's doing it. I'm not eating something and thinking, okay, swallow, okay, stomach, do that. Okay, now go to the small intestine. It's just happening.
Hmm.
But when we do enough things to somehow interrupt that innate intelligence, then things start breaking down. But that's a good question. I think it has a lot to do with, but it's very connected to the bioelectric energy,
Hmm.
to the minerals in the body. And the trace minerals are the spark plugs of the cells. When the minerals are really off, that can be a big problem. But the minerals, the vitamins, those are all connected. The microbiome, the bacteria, even the yeast, they all have their part in the energy and intelligent exchange of information. that's happening all the time.
Well, that connects to what I was also going to ask about too. We can talk for hours of this stuff. I love these topics, but working on the vibration, the chi, the energetic pathways, and how that's it's all connected, creating metabolic harmony, but how important that electrical charge is in your body to have the innate intelligence work. And then connecting that to going back to the full moon cycle and parasites
Mhm.
and active. It was just crazy when you think about how we're all connected, but even to the earth and why we're supposed to walk barefoot
Mhm.
on the grass or in the water, in
Mhm.
the salt water,
Mhm.
and going into that connection of, all right, you mentioned the sun and the moon and the ocean and the tides, and it's just how it all comes together.
Mhm.
But this
Absolutely.
electrical charge part, I think, is what you're
Yes.
referring to, the vibration and chi. If you could, speak to that
Mhm.
a little bit before we wrap up.
Sure. Yeah. So, well, you mentioned the Earth. Every cell has a positive and negative charge to it. I mean, that's science, like a battery,
Yeah.
positive and negative. The cells are like that. So they can become overly positively charged, generally speaking, and underly negatively charged. That's what negative ions are. And we're sort of deficient in negative ions these days unless we really make an effort to walk on the earth, or like you said, put your feet in salt water. Um, Ever since the 60s, we've been using rubber on the bottom of our shoes, which blocks the natural earth current. So, you know, being an acupuncturist and doing a lot of muscle testing, where you can, put the positive charge on one side, the negative charge, and have a completely different result because it's all electrical. And the reality that people can touch something that they're very sensitive to, and their arm just gets so weak
Mm-hmm.
that,
Done that.
and I mean, it's okay to sort of doubt muscle testing. It's great. It's fine because unless you experience it, but it is electrical. It is based on energy. I had a guy, I'll tell you really quickly, a guy come in, 6'4", his arms were bigger than my legs. And he said, I don't normally come to fruitcakes like you. And I was like, oh boy, this is going to be interesting. So I got him on he had stomach pain for 14 years, went to every doctor, every test, every food allergy test. I put cheese in his hand as a muscle test. I could have used my pinky to get his arm down. And then I took it out. I couldn't move his arm. And he's like, what the F are you doing? He was like, he could tell. He came back 2 weeks later and because he had said, no, 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 I've been tested. I've had allergy tests. And I said, I don't care. Just so 2 weeks later, you're the best effing doctor I've ever been to. Because of stomach pain. He had a horrible food sensitivity. Now there's other stuff going on. I never saw him again. He probably just stopped eating cheese. But we're energy. We are energy beings. Where the feet are negative pole, head is positive pole, the cell. So it's all about how we create energy. And just like I was saying before, when toxins interfere with that bioelectric energy, we start losing energy. We don't feel as well. And so nutrition is a part of that. Um, you know, Emotional well-being is a part of that. Uh, Removing toxins is a part of that. So it's all very connected. It's not that complicated though, because it really comes down to common sense. It can be, and it can be fascinating with all the technology and the tests that we can do these days. They're awesome and they're really cool. But sometimes what it's really doing is kind of going, okay, I see I really need to do something here. But it comes down to cleaning up your diet, getting outside, putting your feet on the earth, dealing with some stored issues, emotional, mental issues if you haven't dealt with it. Start dealing with some stuff. Do some exercise, break a sweat. It's not that complicated. And then, yes, if you want to go deeper, if you want to, you know, if somebody has things like parasites or they had, mono when they were 21 and things got really whacked out ever since. There's ways to deal with that. And I do something called biomagnetic therapy also, and that can be amazing for the body to just realign the energies. And guess what? the innate intelligence of the immune system just kicks in and
Yeah.
works better. So yeah,
Reset, recalibrate, recharge.
exactly, exactly.
You know what I think is funny? Whenever we talk about the negative energy, negative and positive, my first instinct could always think when you're trying to learn that it is negative means bad and
Right,
positive is good. And it's interesting how the right away you think negative charge means that's a bad thing. Negative is a bad
right,
word.
right. Yeah, in this
I
case,
wish I could
negative
change the
ions is
words.
good. I
Yeah.
know, I know.
I
But
wish
you
we
know,
could
you
have
have to,
different
it's a
words.
different category. It's a totally different meaning. It doesn't mean negative bad at all, just
I
like a
know, but
negative charge in a battery. Yeah, I
yeah,
know what you
but
mean.
I think people think of it that way. That's negative is
Right,
bad. That is
right.
not. But
Yes,
just it's
true.
hard for people probably wrap their head around that we are just a battery. We need to recharge
Yes.
and reset and
Yeah.
get everything working so the body can do what it's meant to be. And it's brilliant if we give it the tools and the ingredients it needs to keep the system online. But over time,
Mm.
as I said in the very beginning, we need to push the buttons on the computer to reset. We need to turn our cell phone off and recharge it. And if people don't understand how much your body needs that, even if our audience might be more active individuals. And that's kind of my focus on the show is help people be fit and healthy from the inside out. And just because you're
Hmm.
exercising and you're able to go for a 3-4 hour bike ride and you're doing all the exercise part, but you're not taking care of the whole you from the inside out with this holistic approach, that there's more
Hmm.
to being healthy than just the exercise. So we've got that down. Probably a lot of our listeners do too much of it that can cause problems as
Hmm.
well downstream.
Right.
And finding what
Yep.
you're saying, the innate intelligence and the Goldilocks effect for everything is, and getting the right amount that's not core
Right.
outcome.
And that's where individuality comes in also.
Yes.
That's where Ayurveda shines also in terms of,
Mhm.
different body types, you know, should do more or less exercise, or intensity levels.
Mhm.
Someone who's built like an oak tree is really meant to do a little more vigorous exercise. Someone who's thin and skinny and wiry and anxious, you know, doing certain types of exercise is not really beneficial, or they should do things that are going to really help with the vagus nerve, really help with the nervous system, really help soothe, the nervous system. And then, yes, do some strengthening, but nothing hyper, you know.
Mhm.
So, like aerobics would be the worst thing for that person. So, there's different, diets, there's different exercise types. And in Ayurveda, it's really nice because there's even like different gemstones that balance out because gems have energy to them. So certain gemstones are very optimal for different body types. So it gets very expanded, but it's very, very down to earth also.
You know what? We need to do part two and just do a whole hour on that.
Okay,
Because I think
sounds good.
that is an interesting topic we haven't gotten into on this show. And I know so many high performing type A, triple A active competitive athletes, endurance athletes, tend to push themselves and cause that breakdown and burnout from the inside out of their
Hmm.
body systems, and not understanding you might not be doing yourself justice for improving the quality of life in your future and
Right,
your the aging
it's
process. I
true.
think people think they're doing such a good thing. Well, they're doing a marathon and Ironman, and it might be
Right.
not good for
Well,
you and how you
the
can
always
eat.
too much of a good thing isn't a good thing, right?
So let's tell people where to find you to learn more and get a copy of your book.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I have a website, healingessencecenter.com. You can certainly just Google me, Jonathan Glass. Healingessencecenter.com. I guess I'll give up my phone number, 978-369-9228. And my email is healingessencectr, short for center, healingessencectr at Gmail. My book is on the website. And you can also go to Amazon, Barnes and Noble, whatever, and get the Total Life Cleanse book, which was I still learn stuff when I read it. I love reading my book because I get reminded
Mhm.
of things all the time. It's a great book, and it's very easy to read. There's a lot of information in there, but it's easy to
Mhm.
read. It's a pleasant book to read, and all that information about Chinese medicine and the emotions and all the connections, all of that's there too. And I personally am on a bit of a mission to help people reconnect to nature and
Mhm.
reconnect that was natural and help us just walk around knowing that we're not this disconnected thing. That, the wood in the tree is similar to the energies in the liver. The fire in a
Mm.
fire is similar to the energies in the heart and the digestion. And there's correlations and there's ways to understand yourself and be more forgiving of yourself too, but more intelligent and keep improving in our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health.
Well, add that to our list because we didn't really get into that, and I wanted to talk about that. So that's another interesting area to dive into. So part two to figure out
Sounds great.
all of that information be
That's it.
great. So thank you for your time today, and we'll let you guys put any comments in the show notes or the YouTube video. Just put the comments in there, and we'll send them, Jonathan, add them to our follow-up video
Okay.
interview.
One quick thing is on my book, there's a nice ebook about the stressors to health. So it's a
Oh,
nice,
good.
nice book. You can just go there and go to the website. You'll see it, and you can download that book. And I have a cleanse coming up in end of September. So whenever
Great. Well, I'll
this
get the
comes out.
links. We'll put the links in the
Okay,
show notes too. So send me those.
sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.